I wanted to make a much briefer video really breaking down the whole absurdity of the alien narrative, the mythos that through panspermia we were seeded here on the earth to be the genetic experiment of a bunch of off-world gardeners who wanted to raise and experiment human beings, and perhaps they're coming back after many aeons. This whole narrative is really a replacement creation mythology to get rid of the older biblical heritage of Western civilization, to give it something more amenable to a technocratic sort of socialist society. If you look to the origins of the modern alien mythos, you'll notice that its premier propagandists, like H.G. Wells, who even early on in War of the Worlds discusses how this is really evolving out of a materialist ethos and metaphysic. If you look at other cases more recently with academics who've investigated the history of the UFO phenomena and the surrounding belief systems and cults that often spring up, you'll notice that a book that I highlight quite often called Lure of the Edge by Dr. Brenda Denzler, it includes a significant section that covers a Brookings Institute report from 1960. That is one of the premier think tanks, if you're not familiar, that discussed how alien life would actually have the ability to upseed and upend the existing biblical heritage of the West. In other words, people would stop believing in the doctrine of the incarnation if the establishment promoted the idea of alien life, extra biological entities, etc. This would mean then that the biblical story of redemption is no longer true, and thus you can see that even in 1960 they were discussing the usefulness of this ideology to create or to religiously engineer a new kind of religion. Now, other people that I mentioned, like H.G. Wells, also wrote other big fat books about creating a new future religion for the technocratic society. For example, he wrote a book called God the Invisible King, and in that book he says that he does believe in a kind of rational Luciferian type of future government, and he would like to see a religion of the future that is amenable to that belief system. So notice that as we cover these ideas and these figures, we're getting all kinds of admissions that this is really an establishment promoted idea. Top high-level people in black ops, government, religion, etc., intelligence agencies are always intimately connected to the alien agenda or the idea that the government's oppressing aliens and they don't want you believing in it. Nothing could be further from the truth when you really dig into this. In fact, when we go back to the earliest cases of abductions, for example, if we look at the character of George Adamski, his story, while again paralleling the science fiction of his day, which suggests that this was a bunch of baloney, his story is also bound up with his theosophical occult religious beliefs. And it was later exposed that he didn't actually go up on his craft and talk to giant-breasted Marilyn Monroe Venusian aliens, as he claimed. It was all borrowed from, again, a science fiction story. However, did you know that Allen Dulles, head of the CIA at that time, would run interference to threaten anyone who would try to call into question his story as something that was going against national security interests of America? Well, why would the head of the CIA care about some random kook who claims to have seen giant tatas on an alien ship? It doesn't make sense unless they were really fomenting and fostering this narrative. Likewise, other famous cases like the Betty and Barney Hill incident, their story was also fraudulent. And what do they do after their so-called abduction? They set up an alien cult. So you notice that from the very outset, there's always been this fraudulent element. There's always been this CIA black ops element going on in the background. I mean, even the Men in Black narrative suggests that there's always some sort of government presence or black ops presence in a lot of these cases, at least, perhaps most of these cases. We have the mythos of the Majestic 12 document, which purports to hide the truth, that the government doesn't want the alien mythos and narrative to come out. I actually think this was all just disinformation, and that this was put out on purpose to create a cover story, to deflect away from advanced technologies, black operations that were being done, covert operations, the alien smokescreen, so to speak. And even beyond that, if you look at cases where the government at a high level, such as Reagan in the 1980s, when they discuss the purpose of this, they actually talk about it like it's there to create the basis for a kind of a one world government. Let's listen to Reagan himself.
Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly Our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet, I ask you, is not an alien force already among us? What could be more alien to the universal aspirations of our peoples than war?
So notice the linking of war in general to the possibility of some alien off-world threat that could bring the world together in some sort of global governance. And if you think this is too far-fetched, well, keep in mind that there are people who have been arrested and convicted for abusing or for kidnapping people and using this sort of alien mythos to create a narrative for those that they abused. And if this is going on at a small level, I wouldn't be surprised if it goes on at a bigger level. In fact, you can look at John C. Lilly, the famous MKUltra doctor. He discusses right here in his book, Programming and Metaprogramming in the Human Biocomputer, that he's not afraid to experiment on, shall we say, youth and reprogram via these experiments. So the same types of people doing this, they would have no qualms about creating and manufacturing and fostering a new alien mythos. If you like this video, you can support my work through the Bitcoin QR code there, which is my Bitcoin wallet. You can also head on over to chalk.com, the best in online supplementation, and use the promo code J40Life, J44Life, that's JAY44LIFE, to get 44% off all those great products.